Thank you for joining us tonight on Facebook from Noahide World Center. And thank you for joining us on Facebook and all the other places. You can share this video wherever you want. It's good. This is Torah for the Nations, coming to you live from Spot Israel, and we're doing it under the auspices of Noahide World Center in Jerusalem. Rabbi Sherbow and Rabbi Goldberg, and we're so thankful that we work with them. We appreciate it very much. Today is the December 17th, 16th in the USA, 17th on our side of the world, and we are here with, let's see, what do I got to do here? Bear with me. Dan used to do most of this stuff, and now I'm doing it. So we're here with, let's see, we have in the room right now, I'm going to put it on gallery view for just a second, so everybody can see that people have their cameras on. There's Terry Hayes, Scotty Helton, the Tennesseans, and Hans from Paraguay, Cole from Washington State, Thomas, another Tennessean, Three Musketeers from Tennessee, Amuela, which I forgot where you are, but it's Canada, right? Yeah, because I know you mentioned one of the breakfast restaurants there that I used to go to once in a while. I was in Canada, and Devorah is here. Thank you for being with us. And we're going to go back to speaker view because I know it's a lot easier to
Rabbi, I apologize. Did you share that on any of the Facebook pages?
Not yet. I'm going to do it right now. Thank you. Let me go to share, and I'm going to share it, and I'm going to put it on. Now, wait a minute. Did I do it for everybody? Can you see it on Facebook? News feed. Share to my news feed. It's going to my news feed, post to Facebook.
Is it public?
I'm thinking it is.
Okay, I have it now. Yes, I have it now.
You see it there now? Okay, I'm going to copy that just in case I need it. Okay, and it is public, yes? All righty, got it. Let me see if it's public on my Facebook page. Sorry, folks, for all this preliminary stuff. Yes, I see it now. It's public. Okay. No, I don't see it yet on my Facebook page.
You just have to refresh your Facebook page. I'm seeing it on there.
Okay, if you see it, then that's good. Let's see what's doing here. Yeah, okay, I see it now. I don't see it on my page, but I see it in YouTube, so I'm going to say everything's okay. All right, let's get back to the screen I had here. Let's see, YouTube. All right. Well, no, I thought it was all right. Wait a minute. Okay, now I'm back in. I keep thinking I'm going to, why don't I go back to the Zoom meeting one? Oh, there it is over there. Yeah, I've got to have two screens. Okay, everybody's going, it's working. Okay. Looking good. Happy Hanukkah to everybody. What a joyful, thank you so much, Cole, for that share. Thank you all for joining us on this happy holiday. This is, yes, happy 7th. Thank you, Devorah. You know, Hanukkah, what a wonderful and joyous holiday it is. It's a holiday that eventually we're hoping the whole world's going to start participating in. Why? Because it is a story of God's miracles. It's a story of togetherness. It's a story of oneness. And it's a story of bringing God's light into the world. The Hanukkah menorah, the menorah in the Holy Temple, has seven branches, one in the middle going up and then three on each side. And to remind you that the menorah in the Holy Temple was made from one piece of gold. It wasn't made from sections put together. And Zechia watching on YouTube, good to see you. What is this? This is one solid piece of gold. Imagine how big that piece of gold had to be. If you've ever seen the one that stands up there by the wall in Jerusalem, as you're going down to the wall, it's huge. The thing's got to be 6 feet tall. And it's got the 7 branches. And it's all made from just one singular piece of gold. And it represents all the different pathways or the different types of Jewish people that are all one together with God, and everybody else that's one together with God. We're all part of his menorah, his light that shines out into the world. And we're all together, and we're one, and we're all a part of one. And it's not something that was patched together. In other words, the arms weren't made by one artisan, and the knobs that are on there and the little flowers and stuff, they weren't made by another artisan, and the stand by somebody else, and somebody came along and just welded them all together, kind of, here, let's put it together. Whenever I think about this, I think about Frankenstein. I know that's kind of weird, but Mary Shelley wrote that famous book about somebody that pieced together a human being and then had lightning hit it. But he was still all the separate pieces. His brain was one way, and his hands were another way, and his arms were another way. But the menorah, the light of God that shines across the world, is made from and for every single human being. It doesn't make any difference who you are. His light is for all of us. And we're all one together, just like that menorah, just like that. What we use as a light on Hanukkah is called a Hanukkah, because it's different than the menorah that stood in the Holy Temple, which only had 7 branches. The Hanukkah has 9 altogether, 8 for the days, and 1 we call the Shomer, the Shamash, the head guy. And it just, when I walk through the streets of Israel, and if you guys have seen any of the pictures that are up on the internet of the streets of Israel and in Jerusalem and here in Sfat and in Bet Shemesh, you walk through, and just everywhere you go at night, there's a menorah, a Hanukkah outside the house or outside. And if it's an apartment building, you might have 6 or 7 outside, one representing each person. Not person, but each family that lives in the building. And it shows that God's light gets to the furthest corners of the world. Now, we are essentially, the Jews are in exile around the world, and we're everywhere. I mean, Chabad has Chabad houses. You wouldn't believe where they have Chabad houses. And now they're popping up in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Bahrain and all these different places, with actually the people of those countries coming to the Hanukkah lighting ceremonies. You know, you do it out in public in front of people. Even here in Israel, we have public ceremonies everywhere, every single night. And everybody gets donuts and potato latkes and all kinds of fried food. I treated myself this evening for dinner. I treated myself for French fries instead of potato latkes, and I made me a big stack of French fries. Hello to West Java on YouTube. Imam, I can't pronounce the name. Pamudi, I guess. And Zechi on YouTube also. Now, Hanukkah is just so joyful, and it's such a wonderful time. And it's a time for singing and dancing and celebrating God's light in the world. we've been through a lot. We read about the exodus, exiles, the different exiles that Jews have had. The latest and greatest, of course, 2,000 years ago by the Romans, it was spread around the world, on every single continent. We're spread around the world. And it is a punishment for the way we acted, yes. But sometimes I think of it like this as a Jew, and I think about it myself. We're kind of like God set us up. He needed us to go out to the rest of the world to spread light and teach, because we're supposed to teach about him to the whole world. But, sometimes when you're working for somebody, they want to send you on a business trip and go out of where you live. Sometimes it bothers a little bit, or they sign you to a foreign country and, it bothers you a little bit. But the way he did it for us was to make us actually partners in whatever nations we're in. USA, Spain, France, Italy, all the nations of South America and Europe. So we actually felt, yes, this is where we were born and raised, and this is a good place to be, but we have to let the people, we kind of go be in with the people, live with the people, not to assimilate, but to live there where people can see us, and we're supposed to spread the light. We haven't been successful at it. We're human beings in a lot of places. A lot of places we've been very successful, like in New York, when the Jews immigrated from Europe after World War II, a lot of them just stopped in New York. But they're all over America now for the most part. And what we did is show people how to celebrate Hanukkah. And the Hanukkah then gets to the bigger thing of, here is God, here's his light, you're a part of it. Bask in his light. Be with him in his light. Now, usually during Hanukkah, we have what we call Shabbat Hanukkah, which is the Shabbat that falls during Hanukkah. And we usually read, the Torah portion is usually read as Vayishev. This is a very unusual year that wasn't read during Hanukkah. And I forget once every how many years it happens. There's a number to it, 50, 60, 90, I don't know, I don't remember. But this year, what we usually read during Hanukkah is the Torah portion called Miketz. And that's about, it's Genesis 41:1 to 44:17. It's about Joseph's imprisonment, his imprisonment ending when Pharaoh has his dreams of the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows. Everybody knows the story. The one's got swallowed up the other, and the 7 ears of grain swallowed by 7 lean ears. And so Joseph interprets for the Pharaoh the dreams. It says 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of hunger, and he advises Pharaoh to set up a storage and distribution center. And this is part of what the light of God does in the world when it's used properly. He prepares us for all the times that are coming along. So Pharaoh appoints Joseph governor of Egypt. Wow. God was thrown down into the hole with scorpions and snakes. And he's appointed Pharaoh of Egypt, and he started as a slave there, of course, working for Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's chief advisors. And Joseph ends up marrying Asnat, the daughter of Potiphar, and they have 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Later on, these 2 young men become 2 tribes of the 12 in Israel. And some people say, well, wait a minute. If Joseph marries Asnat, daughter of Potiphar, well, how can their sons end up being Jewish in the line of things? So we find out through our sages and through the Mishnah and Gemara that Asnat was actually one of Jacob's granddaughters. It was actually a granddaughter. She was the result of the pregnancy between Dinah and Hamor from Shechem. And they gave her, she was given up for adoption, actually. And she ended up with Joseph. So she came from a Jewish mother, and she's a Jewish mother. And they had two sons who were Jewish. So Joseph could take them in later and make them two of the tribes of Israel. Manasseh and Ephraim were part of the lost tribes of Israel, we call it. Tribes that they just kind of wandered off into the sunset with some other ones. An amazing thing happened yesterday in Israel. There's some people in India that have been living up in the mountains in India that have always called themselves the tribe of Manasseh. And finally, some people from Israel went up there, got people, brought them here, talked about them, followed their family history, followed their traditions, and they recognized them as B'nai Manasseh, or children, sons and daughters of Manasseh. And they brought a whole bunch of them to Israel. I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday, during Hanukkah. They brought these people, this tribe, or this part of this tribe, back home to Israel after all these thousands of years. I mean, when things like this happens, it just boggles my mind. The last of the Ethiopians are coming from Egypt, from Africa, although we don't know what tribe they're in, but B'nai Manasseh knows the tribe they're in. So it's amazing the light that's coming into the world now as we get closer and closer to the time of the revelation of the Messiah. Then we go through, the Miketz goes through the Torah portion, it goes through the whole story of Joseph and his brothers, and the brothers not recognizing him, and the whole thing that happened. But we have what goes along with this Miketz, this Torah portion that we usually read during Hanukkah, is the Haftorah is 1 Kings 3:15 through 4:1. Now, a Haftorah is something that's been chosen by the sages that if we can't study Torah, we study the Haftorah, which reminds us what the Torah portion for the week is. And this week's Haftorah starts with, and Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Well, what happened in Miketz is what happened was, how did Joseph get out of jail? Was the wine butler, I guess they call it, or the wine steward, told the Pharaoh, if you want somebody to interpret your dreams, there's this young Israel guy, Israeli, that can do it for you, because he did it for me and it was true, and he told him the whole story. I'm not going to go through the whole thing about it. But the dream that Solomon had was, it's not in the actual reading, but it was when God granted King Solomon's legendary wisdom. Now everybody became aware of the wisdom of Solomon. I think everybody has heard the story about, there were two, they call them harlots, that lived together, and they came to King Solomon for a judgment. They lived in the same house. Each one gave birth to an infant 3 days apart. And one of the infants was accidentally crushed to death by his mom. And so one woman was accused the other of switching infants to have a live baby, to have one that was alive. Each one claimed the child was theirs. So King Solomon, and this is the greatest story of wisdom I think we've ever heard, says, okay, bring me a sword. And then he gave orders that the child be cut in half, each woman receiving half. Now that sounds terrible. I mean, how can somebody judge something like that? But what happens is the mother of the living child tells the king, give the child to the other one, so that he may live. And the other woman says, okay, it won't be hers and it won't be mine, divide it in half. So the king gave the lady that said, no, don't do it, give it to the other lady, in other words, keep the baby alive. It was proof that she was the actual mother. No mother could stand to see their child injured, even if it meant giving the child up to somebody else, at least the child lives. So under Solomon's leadership and his Proverbs, it became part of our learning and our teaching. And it's an example to us that we should always think things through before we do something. Think things through on how God would want us to do it, not the way we want it done. And this is the whole story of Hanukkah and the miracle of the 8 nights. I mean, let me ask you a question. If you look down at your cell phone right now, and it said it had 10% left, and you couldn't get to a charger, and it lasted 8 days with 10%, that would be a real miracle, wouldn't it? You'd be rejoicing over that. So, well, this is what happened. Those lights lasted those 8 days until the recharging could get to the menorah, so it could be properly have what it needed to charge it up. So we use the Haftorah to explain to us about the Torah portion, and it's really a lot of people, and I'm just going to bring this up. I usually don't bring stuff up like this, but I hear so many people send me, why don't you guys read Isaiah 53? Why don't you read it in your synagogue? And it annoys me no end. I'm sorry, I got to say it. Because if those people that tell me that would read Isaiah properly, they wouldn't ask the question. But it annoys me no end. I'm sorry. But there is no reason for Psalm 53 to be read because it doesn't remind us of a Torah portion that we can study when we're told, if we see you with the Torah, we'll burn it, but you can go ahead and study the other parts, the writings and stuff. It's happened more than once in our generations, and that's what Hanukkah is all about, by the way. The Greeks would not allow us to read and study Torah. And if you were caught doing it, it was like a death penalty. And so the children, of course, our children are really, they're precious, valuable possessions of God. And we could not stop teaching them how to read and write and learn Torah. And so we used to do it inside a home or inside a cave in the mountains and so forth. And they put a guard outside to watch if any Greeks were coming. When the Greeks came, the kids would and the teachers would put away their books, pull out the dreidel, the little spin top that we play games with. And it's actually was a gambling game back in the day. And so they would just switch to playing the dreidel game, and the guards would look at them and say, oh, they're just gambling, and they just walk away. But if the guards came up and the teachers wanted to continue teaching, if they were quoting the Haftarah, they weren't talking about the invisible God that the Greeks would not recognize. They didn't believe in that type of thing. And they thought it was ridiculous that man should think of something invisible as God. So this whole thing is connected to Hanukkah. And that's why we read the Torah portion and how we're all in the Haftorah. Now, the Haftorah starts off with the prophecy and talking about the dreams. And there is, from Zechariah 2:14, which is also a Haftorah we read, it talks about the golden menorah and the high priest, and how we celebrate the miracle of lights of the menorah. We find the oil and so forth. Now, this Zechariah talks about of the oil and about Aaron the high priest and his instructions on lighting the menorah each day. And it comes from Zechariah at the end of the Persian exile, just before we returned to Israel to build the second temple, about 500 or 600 years before the Greeks. And it refers to us at the end of this final exile that we'll soon be building the third temple and last temple in Jerusalem. And it starts off, sing and rejoice, daughter of Zion. Behold, I will come and dwell in your midst. The Jewish people are called the daughter of Zion and told to rejoice. And it has two prophecies, first about Joshua the high priest and second about the golden menorah. But you have to know, this is one of the things that unless you learn it, to think of it in a proper way, you get confused, because we talk about the daughter of Zion, we talk about Zion, we talk about the mother of Zion, and what all these things mean. Now, the Jewish people are called Zion, but only prior to the exile. During the exile, we're below that level. We're referred to as the daughter of Zion. And here to specifically, when we're at this level, that we can bring the most light into the world. The whole idea of lighting the menorah is to shine the light of God throughout the world. So that's why we were out in exile. And when the Jewish people are referred to in the feminine, we're either called the daughter, sister, or mother. We are called the daughter when we do mitzvot, when we are doing the things we're supposed to do, and we accept the burden that God puts on us to do these things. You know, Shira, one of the games she played at the Hanukkah party was, she had two hats, I guess you could say, and she wrote down little things on one set of hat for adults, one for kids, and every single one of them had an act of kindness written on it. So people had to draw their name out of the hat, draw a slip out of the hat, open it up, and read what act of kindness they were given to do. And when we're doing this, when we're doing these things, we're the daughter of Zion. We are the daughter. We're doing the mitzvot. We're God's servants. We just accept what he gives us. Whatever he tells us to do, we just accept it and do it. We are called sister when we study Torah and create a kinship with God, getting to know him. When we study Torah and create the kinship, getting to know him. We are called mother when we pray, like a mother who has an influence over her children. When we pray, we affect God, so to speak, awakening his compassion and kindness. So when the mother and sister mode, while the mother and sister modes are more meaningful or sound more meaningful, they can only draw God's light commensurate, okay, according to one's own prayer or learning. However, in the daughter mode, the person is not a factor, since he has totally taken himself out of the picture and put on God's yoke and accepts it and does what he's supposed to do. So, how many of us worked in the daughter mode the last week? The daughter of Zion. Being kind to people, showing God's light onto other people. We're not in the picture at all. We're just doing what God wants done. Wait a minute. How do we find out what he wants done? Well, of course, the 7 universal laws for all mankind tell us what he wants done, but they're presented kind of in a negative way. But he's telling us what he wants done, how he wants us to be kind to people. All the things, the nice things, or not do all the bad things, makes us nice to everybody. And helping our brothers and sisters and doing what needs to be done. So that's when we are that operate as a daughter of Zion. Guess what happens? We've taken ourselves out of the picture. We're doing bringing God's light into the world, and we bring the most possible light we can when we're in that mode. As soon as we put ourselves back in the picture through study and learning and say, well, this is what I've learned, I didn't learn the other thing, and things like that, you reduce God's light. Now, you know what? It has been cold and rainy. It's been steady raining for 48 hours, thunderstorms and all that kind of stuff. And it's chilly. We don't have central heat. So my chronic bronchitis is acting up a little bit. I apologize. When we operate in the daughter mode, we've totally subjected ourselves to God's will without thinking about what about me first. We're shining the most amount of light we can possibly shine on the world, each one of us. The minute we go into the other modes, we're limiting the light according to our own ability, not God's ability. When we're doing the right things for God, when we are doing what he wants us to do through him and shining the light, we allow him to make it brighter than we could ever possibly do it. Absolutely brighter than we could ever possibly do it. But as soon as we go into, and there's nothing wrong with being the sister or the mother, there's nothing wrong with learning, there's nothing wrong with moving forward with God in our personal lives. But when we concentrate, if we concentrate too hard on us personally, it takes light that should be shining out to the world, because it takes power, it takes energy. So Zion itself, the word Zion refers to tzaddikim, or righteous people. Daughter of Zion refers to those who connect to the tzaddikim, especially the tzaddik of the generation, which we have tzaddikim in every generation. And that's why that's why you guys hear us talk about Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Litvish, and all the different types of Chabad and all the different types. Because when we connect to a person who is a tzaddik in a generation, for us, we serve, and we serve with joy. Even if we happen to do some mitzvot out of a sense of duty, because my Rav, my tzaddik says, I have to do it this way and not that way. But each Rav, each tzaddik of the generation, and like here in Israel, we have two rabbis appointed to lead people. One's the rabbi of the Ashkenazi, one of the Sephardi. And under that, you have the Rav of the Litvish and the Rav of Chabad and the Rav of this and the Rav of that. And we all follow according to what we're capable of doing, each one of them. Now, here comes the hardest thing for people to understand. And I saw another one of those posts. Don't post in this Noahide group anything that isn't taught by this ex-rabbi, because it's not right. And see, if I can do nothing else but get through to people, who are you to tell us what's right and what's wrong? Who are you to judge? It doesn't make any difference if you're following a tzaddik, if you're following a righteous person, and this one goes on this path, and this one goes on one next to it, and one next to it, they're all right because they all fulfill Torah. And if you think that you can tell God, well, I'm going to follow this tzaddik and not the other ones are wrong, then who do you think you are? It just doesn't work that way. I'm sorry I'm talking a little tougher than I usually talk, but this idea has to get out to people. It has to get out to people. They all end up at the same point, so they're all right. The paths may be a little different. That's okay. But as long as the God of Israel is your God, and that's how you pray to, and not other people, then they're all right. I hope I never, ever go to a Noahide group again and see a post like that. You might as well go back and go to the church if you want to have that kind of stuff. You might as well go back and join your church and point at the others across the street and said, they're going to hell because they're wrong and we got it right. Don't bring that stuff into the Noahides. Don't bring that stuff where it doesn't belong. It's trash. It belongs on the outside, not on the inside. If you pick a tzaddik to follow or a rabbi to follow, it's okay if you listen to other rabbis. You get other views of the same exact thing, but looking at it from different angles. Everybody knows the old thing about the three blind men and the elephant, right? One gives a description of it by touching the tail, one by the trunk, one by the side, one by the ears. Hey, they all got it right, don't they, for what they're able to see at the time? They're all talking about the elephant, right? Well, if you choose to follow a particular group of teachers out of Israel, if you're following somebody else, then you got to redouble check your stuff. This is a time of year. The Menorah Hanukkah is lit. This is a time of year that God is reminding us that we're all one, like the menorah that's built for the Holy of Holies. Where does it sit? Right in front of the Holy of Holies, made out of one piece of gold. One, but we're all part of it. We're all part of God, the oneness of God. And we work together. What happens is, boy, all those branches get lit up, and there's a beautiful light of God shining in the world and a beautiful joy. It doesn't generate negativity. You want to break off one of the branches and go take it someplace else? Do it on your own time. But don't influence other people about it. When we work in unity, when we work together, when we're the daughter of Zion, it generates a true joy because we receive it through God and through our tzaddik, and we work in unity. Our egos, we don't judge, because there are things we don't have the right to judge. But this kind of togetherness, when we work together, as each one his own separate light, but made from the same gold, the same preciousness, it creates a momentum. It creates a joy that is powerful, that other people would like to join and will want to join. This is a joy of unity. This is the meaning of sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion. This is us, folks, out here putting things together so we can make people joyful and have them come and join us. And then it says, the joy of unity and nullification to the self and to Hashem's will fills the world with such a great light. Behold, I will come and dwell in your midst, he says. And that's the whole reason the first tabernacle was built in the temple. And that's why the third temple is going to be built. So he's come and dwell in the midst of us. So anyway, I got sidetracked a little bit into something I had to get said, and I'm sorry I said it. I'm not sorry I said it in the way I said it. Maybe it'll wake somebody up, actually. I'm not sorry. I'm usually not that forceful, but I had to do it this time. Okay, that's about Hanukkah, which last light coming up tonight, I think, if I get it right. Lose track of days when Shira's not here. She's my calendar. I have to always go look at the calendar. Those of you that belong to Torah for the Nation's Women's Group, not quite sure when the next broadcast is going to be, but it's going to be towards the end of January when she gets back. Okay. Where's my piece of paper with the next subject? Anybody have anything they want to say right now? Terry, you got anything you want to add? Scotty, or anybody else, put your hand up and come on and join us.
Also, I was sitting here as I was listening, and and I know as well from my own studies that the menorah in the temple was made of one piece of gold, and it had to be made exactly how Hashem instructed it. The artist was not allowed to add his ideas, his thoughts, I think this is nice, into it. It was one piece, and it was Hashem's piece, and it was done the way he wanted it to do. And it's like with the 7 laws, or even with the covenant of Israel, we are not to add anything to it, to make any changes. It's already done. It's one piece.
Thank you for reminding me, reminding all of us of that, Terry. That's a good observation. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and I'll take it one step further. That when we were putting together the tabernacle in the desert, each person did his part according to who he was. In other words, if I'm a weaver, I'm not going to go work with gold. And if I'm a dyer, I'm not going to work by weaving. Whatever my purpose that God gave me to be part of the oneness, then I use it for that. And we have to look at it from, he gave the Jews a purpose to teach the world about him. It doesn't make any difference. People went with this whole replacement theology and all that kind of stuff. Remember, we're just people like everybody else. We have the same battles inside that everybody else has. It doesn't make us any different. We're all one and the same. But it's how you handle what's inside of you that is the challenge in every single person born. It doesn't make any difference if you're Jewish or not Jewish. Every single person born has the same challenge. And that's why we like to teach people how to go about working on themselves. I read, Terry, did you put that up? That was it Tolstoy that made that quote? Yeah, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. Now, come on now, how do you think we're going to change the world? I'm going to go tell everybody else how to change things, and I'm going to be the same old as I am? It don't work that way. It doesn't work that way, sorry. You got to work on yourself every single day. Every day. Now, that's why I tell everybody, and this is so important, if you can't study every day, if you can't do something every day, make sure you have this in your library. Brit Olam, Noahide prayer book. In the very beginning, it tells you how to start your day. The Modeh Ani prayer, when you wake up, and the blessings after you get out of bed. At the minimum, do that. It's there to help you. It's there for you to learn how to change yourself. And it's to remind yourself every single day what God does for you and what you can do for him. We get up in the morning, and look, we're living in times that people get up in the morning, it's, oh my goodness, I got to go out there and go to work today, the plague and whatever, And we wake up in extreme pressure, and we go to sleep in extreme pressure, and we're constantly worried, and everybody's worried about the vaccine that's coming up. And should I get it, not get it, what's good, what's bad? And that's constantly on our heads. And look, I'll be honest with you, for a guy like me, at my age, I'm glad they got a vaccine coming. But am I going to run out there and be one of the first people to take it and not a shot? I want to see how other people my age react to it if they go out and get it first. It puts everybody under pressure. It's been since March 13th that I've been pretty much in isolation. Since March 13th, when our Sharon and I were at the doctor before it really all started, before Purim. And she was not feeling well, and I was having my usual bout of the bronchitis and sinus problems that start off or at the end of the winter it was then, March 13th. He said, look, just go home and stay there right now. There's other stuff coming. I mean, he was a doctor, he knew it was coming. And we did. And all of a sudden, people all around us started getting sick, and all this other stuff started happening. And we all know what we've been through the last 10 months, I guess. and it's not near the end yet. And it's a shame. And I feel personally, I was thinking about it the other day, my daily prayers I do at home. I don't go because there is no congregation you can go to right now. Some of them are starting to open up again with 10 people. Shabbat, I always go. I always go on Shabbat. I just the rabbi that I follow here, my local rabbi, he got together a little bit of money from people, and he put I don't know what they call it in English, a pergola. Is that an English word? It's like a wooden, like a gazebo. Everybody knows what that is. That's the wooden roof, the slats and everything. But the thing is humongous. It covers the whole top of our building, so the wind can come through, and it's like open. The government considers it an open place, so we can go pray. 20, 25 people can go in there. If we were downstairs in the building, it would be 10 people, and they don't let you go down in the building in a closed environment anymore. It started raining, so we had to make some quick adjustments to the roof there. We put some canvas on it and everything, so everything stays dry inside. But then we have a place where we can worship, and I go there every Friday night and every Saturday. And during the week, we're starting to have a few little teaching meetings now there. But it's changed my whole life. But what I don't want to do for me personally is end up getting sick. So I take precautions. Will I take the vaccine? I don't know. I don't think anybody should say I'm not taking it flat out. Wait and see what happens. I mean, there was a time I was alive during the polio epidemic. And I remember people talking at my parents gathering at my mother's and father's house, and they did a big thing about taking the polio vaccine. And there are people who said, my kids will never have it. I'm not going to give that vaccine. Well, guess what? In the end, every child got it. And polio was pretty much eradicated from the world as long as people kept getting the vaccine. The same for measles. These things happen, and we got to keep them away from human beings, keep it away. So eventually, I'm pretty sure it's all going to work out the way God wants it to work out. And I actually pray every day that I'm not exposed to somebody that's been exposed, because I do have to go to the grocery store every now and then and get a haircut every now and then. But don't be frightened and put under pressure by these vaccine people, the yesers or the knowers. It was something really interesting. I discovered it last week. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I saw it again today. People are sending out letters. These are all the reasons not to get the vaccine. And they take, instead of, who's the guy, a used car salesman in Des Moines and a cowboy in Texas, and they go around and collect different articles that profess their point of view, and they put them together in this real nice letter. And they send them out across the internet saying, these are the reasons why you shouldn't. But they're not medical researchers. They're not doctors. They're not people that actually know what's going on. They only know what they read. They've never studied it. And it's kind of somebody like trying to teach you Torah that's never really studied Torah, but he's only studied what other people told him about Torah. He's never gotten together and studied it with someone who knows. If you want to be able to teach something, you should know it before you teach it. If you know Aleph, you teach Aleph. If you know A, you teach A. But if you don't know B, keep your mouth shut. Then you don't lead anybody astray. This happens in every single thing in life. I was a car salesman for years. A lot of people don't know that. Long story how I got into it, but then I used to train salesmen. And boy, everybody and his brother came to me and said, hey, I'm a good talker. I can sell. And I used to tell, okay, you want to sell cars? Take my course. when I ended up being the manager of car dealerships. And people found out it's not what you talk, it's not how you talk, it's how you listen that gets things done and sells things. Most people think a salesman's got to be boy, you got the gift of gab. You're a good talker. You're a good salesman. Well, just because you're a good yapper doesn't mean you're a good salesman. A salesman must listen to the person they're talking to and respond to them in the questions and the things that they want, or what they're leading you to answer questions and so forth. It's a long thing. The point is, once you know a little bit about Torah and God, and you start running your mouth, and you're not still listening to put your learning together in the proper manner and then talking about it, you are damaging people. You're hurting people. You are keeping them from the real truth. And that's what religions have done for thousands of years. The truth of God has been here since Mount Sinai, 3,300 years. And if you look around, all the other people took little pieces of it and said, this is all we're going to learn, this is all we're going to do, we're going to go teach this to other people, and have led them astray and have hurt them and their ancestors. Absolutely hurt them. Then they said, well, you know what? You're getting hurt because you have a generational curse in your family. Your great-grandfather did something wrong. They're even teaching that wrong, what a generational curse is in a family. They think that someone else can pay for your sin, when God says every single person pays for their own sin. But they don't want to hear that. And by the way, God does says, I will curse them up to the 10th generation or something like that. And I don't remember exactly. Terry probably remembers where it is, but I don't. But how can God make a statement like that when he says everybody pays for their own sin? Well, here's the deal. The deal is this. I teach my son wrong, and he follows it. Then he teaches his son wrong, and he follows it. They are sinning in each generation by following wrong. But any generation can say, whoa, wait a minute. Let's take a look at what we've been taught by our forefathers. Let's look and see if it is really the truth, or we're just following something that somebody said. And that is, James says, I've seen that generational curse, false teaching from my own family. Yes. But you guys are stopping it in your own families. Can you believe it? You're going from the lies that were taught, which eventually all the nations are going to come to Jerusalem and say, our forefathers taught us nothing but lies. And it's true. Now, they're not responsible because they're not lying to you. This is just what they taught. They never went and researched it, and they taught it to the next generation. They weren't purposely lying or covering up. But they never had the gumption to say, is this right or is this wrong? Let's take a look at what we're being taught. And you folks that are listening to me and the Noahides around the world are saying, wait a minute, let's take another look at what we've been taught. Is this really the truth? You know, in science, they always come to the truth. It took the Civil War for doctors to realize they were spreading infection and germs from one person to the next, going and working on one person, going without washing hands, without sterilizing, without everything. All of a sudden, there's a flash of light. Hey, we got to wash our hands going from patient to patient. We see the germs and everything that are causing the problem. If you don't look for it, you're not going to see it. And sometimes it's so small that people figure it's not there at all. And they can do things the way they want. And that's what people think about God, because he has hidden himself so well from the world so that we can have the world and we can operate as who we are in the world, and we can do these things. We're the ones that have to part that curtain, see the light, and get done what God wants us to do as individuals. Go ahead, Terry.
If I remember right, I think Cole and Scotty and them can help me here. In the teaching of Avodah Zarah from how it began with the worship of the stars, it tells that. It tells how it passed from mother and father to children and until, Hashem was forgotten about. I think it explains actually that whole detail, how the falsehood grows in through the generations when it's talking about how idolatry began.
That's true. You're exactly right. And, it's nice just to honor our parents. And God tells us that's one of the things He wants us to do is honor our parents. But what He doesn't say is we have to believe everything they teach us. I mean, come on. If we'd still be carrying fire around in pots if we believed everything they taught us, you got to have a lightning strike, and you got to carry the fire lit with you all the time, and all that kind of stuff. If we didn't get to understand the workings of things, then that's exactly right. But when they first started looking at the stars and they started worshiping the stars, come on, we now know we can travel to the stars, right? We now know a lot more about it. I think they're planning on a mission to Mars sometime in the relatively near future. I'm not going to say in the near future, but it's relatively near. It's nearer than it was in the 1800s, So it's amazing what we can do. Gloria from California, John Riggs, how you doing? Friends from North Carolina, USA. All right. Anyway, okay. I think I run my mouth about a lot of different things tonight. Go ahead, Terry.
There's kind of a humorous story about passing knowledge on or tradition. It's a story about a young husband and wife, and they were having their first meal together after they were married, and she was cooking a pot roast, and she cut the end off the pot roast and put it in the pot and put it in the oven. And he asked her, said, "Why did you waste the end of the pot roast? Why'd you cut it off?" "Well, that's the way Mom always done it." So she called Mom, says, "Mom, why'd you always cut the end of the pot roast off? My husband's wanting to know why I'm doing it." She says, "Well, I had a small pot."
Small pot.
So she always thought there was a reason why, but it was Mom had a smaller pot, so she had to cut the end of it off.
That's funny.
And so the daughter carried the tradition, didn't know why she done it. So that's
always got to ask.
Yeah, so that's you've got to ask and seek out. Sometimes we just carry, blindly those things we see that was done, and sometimes we just do it because that's the way Mom, Dad done it, and it's the way the uncle done it, without really finding out why.
It's it brings to mind another story. When I drive, and I learned how to drive many years ago, and I took a course in professional driving on the street, a defensive driving course. And part of the course was, if you're going to pass another car or if you're going to change lanes, you put your blinker on, but you look in your side view mirror, but you also turn your head and just glance. People hang dry cleaning in their car. There's never dry cleaning on the behind me when I'm driving. You just glance. It only takes you a second to glance, and you can see if there's another car there. Car, truck, whatever. So you don't turn out into them. And of course, because the mirrors have dead spots in them. So we always, and I always, everybody glances to the right. Nobody glances to the left. I do. I've known a few other people that do it. Last time I was in America about 4 or 5 years ago, my oldest daughter was taking me somewhere. I was sitting behind her in the driver, behind her in the second row. And yeah, the blind spot. And I saw that every time she made a move to go left, she always turned her head and looked, So I said, who taught you how to do that? She says, I always saw you doing it. I never knew why, but so it's automatic for me now. I just turn my head and look. She didn't know why she was looking, but she always saw me do it before I moved lane to the left. And so she always did it. Now, maybe 1 or 2 times she did it like that and saw a car there, and so she didn't pull over to that lane or didn't pass another car, but she didn't know why she was doing it, other than she used to see me doing it. Now, but she did it anyway. This is how we deal with a lot of things in our life. We've seen our parents do it, our grandparents do it. We don't know why they're doing it. We never ask them why. She never asked me why I look like that to the left. She just said, you always do it, so I do too. That was it. How many things in your life are you doing because you saw somebody do it, your parents or your grandparents or somebody that influenced your life? Do you do just because you saw them do it, or they said it's a good idea to do it, and you never ask the question why? It's always good to ask questions. Now, when you ask a question, a person tells you why, your job isn't to judge that person right or wrong. You've gotten the reason why that person is doing it. Then you have to decide, am I doing it for the same reason? Or do I have another reason involved? You always have to try to understand this particular thing. You can question anything in Torah. You can question anything in Midrash. You can question anything in the Mishneh Torah. And guess what? You can read a whole book about questions if you want to. It'll drive you nuts probably, because it does me sometimes. The Talmud, the Gemara. One question after another question after another question. And just when it sounds like you got the answer, they'll tell you, now, wait a minute, let's look at this other side of it. Do we have the full answer? Is there another part of the answer? The boys learning this in yeshiva learn this type of reasoning so strongly that they can go out and go through law school and work in the courts and be happy with going through the volumes and volumes of court decisions and all that kind of stuff. I could have never done it, but I didn't grow up learning this stuff like a lot of yeshiva boys have. But that's why there's so many Jewish attorneys, because they learn it right from the get-go when they start going to yeshiva. How to look at things from all directions, how to ask the question. Good night, Tony. Good to see you. If you got to know, ask the questions. Ask. But don't ask it to try to refute what the other person tells you. Use the knowledge of the other person together with your knowledge. Because that person's reason is different than yours doesn't make it wrong. If everything in the end comes to the same point, it's all right. If you're at one point and someone else is over here at this point, and you're asking them, why are you over here? And they're telling you, and you say, I don't like that reason. You have just made yourself ignorant. It's just plain, simple words. You made yourself ignorant because you're not looking at the whole picture. Maybe it'll change what you think. Maybe something will change there. Go ahead, Scotty.
I find, and ever since I heard this, it just locked in my brain some years back. I find that one of the issues we have here in the West, and I can talk about the West because this is where us Tennesseans live, is that knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about a subject to know when you're wrong.
Oh, good statement. That's really good. I like that. Know enough to know when you're right, but not enough to know when you're wrong. That's when you put yourself ahead of everybody else. What I know is better. Look, we all know people, and they're pretty stubborn people, but we all know people that you can show them anything in the world, and their opinion is the only opinion. There is no other opinion. Period. They look at something, they break an opinion, and that's it. Goodbye, Charlie Brown. Nothing else. And don't be one of those people. Don't be one of those people that's not willing to look at things, turn them over, and willing to, I think the word is abnegate, to cancel yourself out of the picture. Thomas, we all are. It's that simple. We all are. Thomas says, I'm wrong more than I'm right. We're all that way. But you know what? The wronger we get, the righter we end up. We just got to learn it. That's all. So we just got to work it out and do it. Now, quick reminder before we go into anything else. Cole and Tony, 11 a.m. East Coast time. Check out either Seattle Noahides or Arizona Noahides or mine, or they post it in B'nai Noach, Israel. Prayer every Shabbat, every Saturday is prayer time. Take an hour of your time and get together with the community. Try to be one with the community. Go to prayer time. The great thing about it being on Zoom is you can turn your camera off if you're not totally ready to be in front of people. You can still go to prayer time. You can still go in front of God. And then generally Rabbi Goldberg comes in and gives a little explanation of Torah portion. They read the Torah portion. And it's a very good community time. All of you that ask, where's our community? Here it is. It may not be in your next door so you can walk over to it yet, but it will be one day. You guys you're the trailblazers right now. Actually, when I think of you guys, I think of the big waves that come in Hawaii and the surfboarders that ride on top. That's who you guys are. You're on top of that tsunami wave that's going to come crashing into shore, and everybody's going to wake up, and some of that water is going to splash on everybody and say, hey, wow, I just woke up. There's something for me to learn and something for me to do and a God for me to join with and a community to join with. It's so important that you guys come together as a community and do what needs to be done as a community. This is growing your community. What's that phrase you used, Scotty, about impacting yourself and impacting the family, impacting the community, and then impacting the world, right? Something like that. What is it?
Well, when I first started out, it was if you impact your community today, your community will impact the world tomorrow.
Yes.
But now I keep trying to put yourself and your family and your community and tomorrow the world.
Right. Amen. That's exactly, hey, that's one of the reasons God appointed the Jews to teach the world how to do this. And you know what? We're coming to the end of our teaching time. We'll be the priests of the world like God wants us to be. But you guys are going to carry that light out there among the 99.8% of the people that are not Jewish. But if you take it wrong, you're taking God's name in vain. If you do it wrong, you're blaspheming God. And every time somebody gives their personal opinion, they should be thinking about that. You can also hurt other people and affect them so that they can't get a clear connection with God for themselves. Because I worry about it all the time. Something I say or do is going to knock somebody off the bicycle, or affect somebody in some way that they went, I want nothing to do with that. See, I understand people not wanting anything to do with the 613. But the couple of hundred that God wants all humanity to do as universal things, why wouldn't you want to do it? The Creator created you to do it. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say or bring up? Well, if not, we're going to sign off. We're not going to run for the 2 hours. When I said enough, I think. And I want to tell you guys how much I appreciate you guys, and men and women. Guys, I can call guys. I don't want to say guys and girls because it's not politically correct today. So you all, y'all, I just appreciate it very much. You could never get that way in Hebrew. See, in Hebrew, there could be 1,000 women in the group, but if there's one man, you have to say guys, men, address it in the masculine because there's masculine and feminine. That God set up. Don't look at us. We didn't make that decision. If there's no man in the group, then you can address it to the women only. But there's no way to say persons, I guess. There's no way to make this. Anyway, enough said on that. Y'all have a good rest of Hanukkah and have a good weekend. And we'll see you next Sunday night at 10